Chapter 252, Loss in the System. DC jail. Again. This was my 8th time here. I've been in every block more than one time here. Some of the blocks I've been in 4 or 5 different times here. I've served almost 4 years in total here. As the bus pulled up here, I thought to myself, damn, I've been here so many times I'm beginning to lose count here. Wasting away major time out of my life just waiting for the count clear. And here, it wasn't guaranteed that count cleared. Just waiting for the count clear. Here, you could count years. Sometimes hours upon hours and recounts upon recounts before the count cleared. I swear these pigs didn't know how to count here. The officers saw me and shook their heads. Every time I left, they thought I went home and got rearrested. But this time, they knew it was different because I had on the Fed khakis, top and bottom, and some prison decks. While being changed in the DC jail jumpsuit and the DC jail underclothes, everyone looked at my underclothes that I had on and was like, the fuck? One dude asked, damn twin, where the hell are you coming from? He asked me that because he saw what I had on. A pink t-shirt, pink socks, and pink boxers. The administration in Atlanta Penitentiary whole had us wearing pink as a form of humiliation. They believed that placing hardened men in pink underwear would destroy their egos, not knowing that the only people whose egos were destroyed by a color were people who already had destroyed egos. Law. I didn't suffer over the pink underwear I was forced to wear because I discovered the pussy-ass process of pressure, plus the fine possibility of structure. It was like a child policy of smugglers, the culture of the swine plus the wild psychology of colors. Pink was associated with compassion and comfort in mothers, a color they hoped would make us more calm and loving in discussions and not move off of muscles. A lot of businesses dealt in the psychology of colors. Casinos use deep colors of red, purple, and black on the walls and carpets to create a warm, comfortable mood, and are used as a psychological tactic to make their guests feel comfortable so they can lose their money. Supermarkets and fast food places use high-energy colors like red and yellow, which appeal to children. It was all a game. But if one was aware and used their third eye, it was seen from a mile away. It was all a joke. I took off the pink underwear and was given white, and then taken to the cell block. I was brought here to see the parole board this time. My conviction had been overturned and dismissed for almost a year now, yet I'm still serving this time. I didn't expect much from them this time either. They were ruthless in their disrespect of our constitutional rights, and they were definitely pissed off because I filed suit against them this time. I then studied the parole board guidelines and realized that no matter how many violations you had, they would all fall under the most serious violation. This was awesome. My most serious violation was the firearms, and they only carried 24 to 36 months. Everything else carried less time, so they would run concurrent with the 24 to 36 months. The body armor only carried 6 months, and the ecstasy only carried 24 months. This is all according to their own guidelines. This is all according to their law. I already had 48 months served, so according to their guidelines, I would have to be immediately released. A month later, I was taken across an elevated catwalk that connects DC jail to CTF and saw the parole board. It was like going to trial again. A bunch of cops showed up. all the ones involved with the warrantless arrest plus some of their colleagues. This whole place needed to be saged. The dumb pig who messed up his testimony but claimed that he demanded that I open the door didn't show up though. He wasn't brave. But the prosecutor on the case also showed up with his gay sidekick. They looked like two pale-faced raccoons suffering from mange. I had lawyers to cross-examine while I listened to the bitter pig's descriptions that came with scriptures of how dangerous of a killer I am, how I assaulted them, how I resisted and threatened their lives, and how they fear for their safety when I'm not in prison. They testified that the parole board should consider that my level of danger isn't reflected in my criminal record because of multiple acquittals. They were pissed off like little sisters that lost their whiskers that the case was dismissed. A bunch of shape-shifting blisters that needed to be whipped and get their mouth zipped up. They were so arrogant that they used the exact same testimony that they used in federal court that made the appeals court overturn the case for constitutional violations. The exact same testimony. They perjured themselves over and over with no consequences. And this was one of the reasons I could never respect their system. If their own officials could take an oath and tell the truth under the penalties of perjury and jail time, yet blatantly and arrogantly perjure themselves without any penalties or jail time, then what was the purpose of the oath? What was the purpose of the penalty? And why should I respect or follow any of their rules when they themselves didn't follow them? The penalties only applied to non-governmental civilians. If we lied, then we could be held for perjury. But if they lied, it was overlooked. After a 3-hour hearing, I was found guilty of all charges and allegations, including all the charges that were dismissed and other charges that the courts didn't even entertain, like assaulting an officer and threatening to kill cops, and possession of terrorism paraphernalia. I was found guilty of every allegation, over 10 of them, but I was still only facing 24 to 36 months. Chapter 253, Parole Double Jeopardy, 2009. The parole board had the authority to find you guilty based on preponderance of the evidence. If it appeared that you broke the law, they could find you guilty and sentence you to your backup time, meaning the time you had left on your full sentence. It was 2009 and I had 4 years left of backup time, which meant the most they could give me was 4 years, which would be until 2013, and even then that would be way outside of their guidelines of 24 to 36 months. The parole board official agreed that the most time she could give me under the guidelines was 3 years. So I was promptly sentenced to 36 months with time served. I had already been in prison for almost 4 years. She said with processing and paperwork, I should be released from prison within 72 hours. I returned back to DC jail with no feelings toward the hearing or the outcome. I didn't trust anything they said or did. 72 hours came and went. 96 hours came and went. 120 hours came and I was still sitting in DC jail. And again, it went. And no one knew nothing. No one knew anything. No one knew why I wasn't being released. No one knew what was holding me in prison. I didn't have any convictions, any charges, or any warrants. And the fabricated parole detainer had been settled. I had been in prison for over 48 months and I was found guilty by the board and sentenced to 36 months with time served. 120 hours turned into 2 weeks. And 2 weeks turned into 2 months. Finally, after the second month and numerous phone calls, the parole board sent a letter. They wanted to see me again. Everyone familiar with the process couldn't understand what was going on. They never saw this before. They were confused, even my lawyers. Why would they need to see me again? They already had the testimony from the cops. They already had the documents of the outcome of the case from the courts. They already had my testimony of innocence on tape. They already found me guilty and sentenced me to 36 months. Why would they need to see me again? Everyone was perplexed. On the 8th week, 2 months after the parole board said I was to be released from prison, I was taken back across the elevated catwalk to CTF and had another hearing. Same officers came in and presented the same evidence and the same testimony. The parole board hearing official herself said she didn't understand the purpose of the hearing, but was ordered to conduct it by the Department of Justice. She was confused also. She then found me guilty of the same charges from the last hearing and sentenced me to the exact same 36 months with time served from the last hearing. Again, with processing of the paperwork, she said I should be released from prison within 72 hours. But this time, I knew the fix was in. I knew they were up to something. I knew I wouldn't be released. Almost a year and a half has passed since my case was overturned. And over 2 months had passed since the parole board first ordered my release. Yet, here I was, again, being ordered released within 72 hours. 72 hours came and went again. 96 hours came and went again. 120 hours came and went again. And I was still in the same place. 120 hours turned into 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turned into 2 months again. Finally, after the second month and numerous phone calls, my counselor called me into her office and asked me, "What are you doing here in DC jail?" Huh? What you mean? She explained that according to her records, I should have been gone months ago. Gone where? To a penitentiary or home? She didn't reply. I explained to her that I was being held without a conviction, warrant, or detainer for over a year and a half now, and I was held in solitary in Atlanta for over 10 months after my conviction was overturned. I told her I was brought up here to see the parole board twice with 72 hours to release. Yet, I wasn't released. She was a counselor at the jail, so she was used to hearing wild lying stories and getting bush game ran on her from game running convicts. So she thought I was one of them, making up a story. I asked her to call the parole commission to find out what was going on because they won't respond to me or any of my lawyers. After showing her some documents to prove my position, she reluctantly made a phone call to the parole board. She sat on the phone for almost 30 minutes before they told her they would fax over a action sheet, which was a blue sheet of paper with the decision that they made. The fax machine immediately began to buzz. She was waiting for it while using the phone to call someone else. When the machine came to a stop, she looked over at it and grabbed the paper, but she didn't pull it from the fax machine. She just continued looking at it. She just continued staring at it for what seemed like 15 minutes, but it was only a few long seconds. Her eyes seemed to be bulging out while she was reading it. It was like she was stuck and frozen as she read it. She didn't even look at me. Her first words were, "You need to call your lawyer." I said, "Call my lawyer? For what?" She finally grabbed the paper from the fax machine and got a closer look at it. Then she looked at me with sad eyes. I figured it would be ugly, but according to my sentence structure and calculations, the most they could give me was 36 months. She slowly passed me the action sheet, and to my surprise, the parole board gave me 10 years. 10 years? What the fuck? How can I have 10 more years to serve? I just had a 16.5-year sentence overturned and I only had 4 years left on parole. How could I get 10 more years? I was confused. And she was more confused than me. She said, "Here, use this phone. Take as much time as you need, but call your lawyer. And if you need another one, I could recommend a few." 10 years. They gave me 120 months with a 2019 release date. It was 2009. This shit crazy.